let's get right into it. So the agenda for today, it's not going to be a super duper um, slides and super whatever, right? It's going to be a lot more interactive, a lot more open, um, because things like this you can't really learn from slides. You need to see it done, right? So some of the stuff we're going to be going over when I start sharing my actual screen. So we're going to show you how to actually set up a VPS on Google Cloud Platform. So yeah, not very many super duper slides today, unfortunately. But so we're going to go over how to set up your server. So a VPS is a virtual private server, and for the purposes of what you need to know, it's just a server that you're hosting in the cloud, um, that you're going to connect to via SSH or whatever to access. So that's what the VPS stands for. And yes, so for anyone who's wondering, don't worry, the way I'm going to show you how to do it is going to be completely free to you. And when I say free, I don't mean free for 30 days or free until the credits run out. I mean free forever, because thankfully, Google Cloud Platform does offer a free tier, an always free tier, where you get a server. So you get whatever, so 24 hours a day times like 30 or 31 days in a month. So you get that many hours of server time for free if you get a specific type of server. And I'm going to be showing you what that type of server is today. It's not going to be anything crazy. You're not going to be able to run 1,000 websites on it. But personally, I use this very same server for pretty much, like, I have a Discord bot on it. I have 2 or 3 Flask websites on it, a few static sites. So you don't have to worry about not having enough power the way I'm going to be showing you. So the next thing is reserving a static IP address. And this is something that, depending on if you're using Google Cloud or Amazon or DigitalOcean, you may not need to do this, or you may need to. But for Google Cloud Platform, you do need to do this. And essentially what this is when you create your server on Google Cloud, it gives it an IP address, which is great. But for whatever reason, one reason or another, Google Cloud might change it on you. So all you got to do is, it's like 2 steps, and you reserve a static IP address, so that you can connect your domain to it and it'll just always work. So very cool. The next thing, again, it's a super simple thing to set up, but it's something that you need to learn, and that's connecting a domain to your VPS. And really, it is just a couple of DNS records that you need to be able to do that. So the next thing is running a Flask app on your VPS. So as you know, if you're here last week, you would have known how to create a very simple Flask app, as well as run it locally and test it, and have like the debug server running, which is lovely. But I'm actually going to show you how to run it in production. And then the last thing or second last thing, I'm not sure, is configuring Caddy. And Caddy is what we use to actually translate the domain to go into whatever you're running on the server. So it's going to say, you're going to example.com. Okay, let's point it to this app that we have running locally. So that's what Caddy's for. And it's, you may be familiar with things like Nginx, which, can kind of do the same thing. But Caddy is, in my opinion, much, much simpler. It's very fast, very reliable. And the wonderful thing about it is you don't need to do any setup or anything to get HTTPS. So if you're using something like Nginx, you'd probably have to use something like certbot or whatever to get HTTPS working. but with Caddy, it just does it for you. So very, very cool stuff. So that was a lot of talking. Let's actually get into what we're going to learn. So, and if you see, I created this handy little README in a sample Caddy file, and I'll show you what that is later. And this is just going to have most of the steps that you need to understand to get, your website running and your server and all that. I'm going to paste the link to that in chat so that, anyone who's interested will be able to see, and I'll show it on stream for a little bit. But yeah, so what we're going to be going over first is signing up for and configuring Google Cloud Platform. And I'm actually not going to go over all of this because I'm not going to be entering my billing information and all that on stream. But it's something that isn't actually too tough to do, and you should be able to figure it out on your own. So let's get to that. So I'm going to hide this, and I'll bring up my alt Gmail account. Do we need to download to follow along? No, you don't need to download anything. Basically, all you need is a Chrome window to follow along. And so one of the things that you could do is if you have like SSH and all that set up on your computer, you may want to add SSH keys and whatnot. But I'm not going to be going over that just because it's a little bit much and it depends on your system. So I might get into it later, but not at the very moment. Okay, so first thing you want to do is go to console.cloud.google.com, and I already have it configured here. And I'm hoping you're already signed into your Gmail or your Google account. And if this is your first time, you're going to see what I see. And we're going to give it a second. And it's going to say, welcome, Jeremy, and agree to stuff. Don't check that if you don't want spam. And you're going to hit agree and continue. And then you should be all good. And so this is something, I don't know if you can see it, and actually I'll make my screen a little bigger. But one of the cool things about GCP is you actually get $300 in free credits just for signing up. What I'm going to be showing you doesn't actually require these credits, which is cool. But if you want to run like a Minecraft server or something, then that's something you can use those credits for. But so I can hit dismiss, and you can see I'm signed into my account. Select the project. You can see there's no projects. So I'm going to create a new project. And I'm just going to hit create. And you give it a second. And done. So I'm going to hit select project now. And this is just because you need, you need a project before you can start creating like your servers and all that. So cool stuff. And so the next thing you want is to go to compute engine and then VM instances. So that's where you actually create your VMs, your servers. And what you're going to see is it's probably going to ask me to enable billing and yeah. So this is where I'm going to stop for the purposes of setting up GCP. But what you're going to do is create a billing account, and then, you're going to blah, 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 terms of service. You're going to hit continue, and then you're going to add your credit card or whatever. And, the good thing is it's not actually going to cost any money to do what we're about to do. But, this is what you got to do to get moving. So I can say it's just a personal project, agree, continue, and then you're going to need to put in your phone number. It's going to send a code, you put it back, and then you put in your billing info. But like I said, that when they ask for the credit card, yes, they will ask for your credit card. But don't worry, Stephen. You won't actually have to pay for anything. Are we going to use any of the $300 for today's workshop? Nope, we're not going to use any of it because what I'm going to set up is free forever. So that $300, like I don't even enable it in my account, to be honest. But so I'm going to exit out of that because I don't need it anymore. And I'm actually going to go to this, which I already have set up, right? So this is a GCP account that's already like billings enabled, all that cool stuff. So once you have your billing enabled, everything that you really want to deal with is going to be in this navigation menu. So you're going to go here, and like before, you're going to go to Compute Engine and then VM Instances. And we're just going to give it a second. What could we use the $300 to buy? So the $300 you can use to buy more powerful servers. You can use it for different APIs and stuff. Anything that's on Google Cloud Platform, you can use that $300 for. But because we're kind of using the lowest of the low when it comes to servers, we're going to get it for free. So it's not something that we need to worry about for the $300 wise. But yeah, you can use the $300. For example, as you can see, there are a couple of servers. So one of the caveats of what I'm showing you is you only get one server for free. So for one reason or another, you may want to have multiple servers. And that's another thing. So if you want to have multiple servers running, then you're going to have to actually pay for them or use the $300 credits. But if you're just using one, like I'm going to show you today, then it's not an issue. So now that you're in your VM instances, what you want to do is hit Create Instance. And this is just going to go through a bunch of steps to get your server up and running. So first thing you probably want to do is change the name of the instance. So I'm going to change the name to WinHacks is cool. Because WinHacks is cool. Oh, I guess I gotta use hyphens instead. And it has to only be, I guess it's not cool enough to deserve a cool name like this. But there you go. So there's your server. The region and zone, you can just keep same. And then next thing you want to do, keep this as E2. And you want to select E2 Micro. So what you get is 2 cores and 1 gig of RAM. Now that doesn't seem like it's going to be very nice to work with. However, it's more than enough to run what we're going to run today. First time, always free. That's how they get you hooked. Well, the thing is, for this, you don't really need more than one server unless you're running a ton of stuff. So it doesn't really, it's not something you really need to matter. We free and on a budget. We love that. We do. Anywho, so what you're going to see here is a monthly estimate. And so this is where like the $300 credits comes into play. So if you want to have, say, 4 gigs of RAM, then this server is going to cost you about $25 a month to rent. But because we're doing E2 Micro, it's actually free. Now, you may see this, the $7.11, and you say, what the heck, Jeremy? You said it would be free. And that's because as many people who've used GCP are aware, the user experience is not the best. And it doesn't exactly tell you that it's free, but I can tell you that it is. And the other thing is I do already have a server running. So this one that I'm running right now isn't actually going to be free for this account because, again, we already have a free one. But, you know, it would be free for you. And so you can see, you know, where the pricing actually comes into play. But, and this is another thing you got to change is the disk. And we're going to go back to boot disk and we're going to hit change. And where it says balanced persistent disk, we need to get that to be standard. And so standard is free for us. If you go to something like balanced, extreme, or SSD, then it's going to be, you know, it's going to cost money. So you want to go standard, and you'll see that $7.11 is going to go down. Yeah, I'm seeing what the heck. You said it was going to be free. That wasn't very PogChamp of you. Well, fear not, because it is actually free. And even if it weren't free, you would still have the $300 in credits, but you don't actually need to use them because it is free. So the next thing you're going to want to do is change the operating system. And actually, I prefer using Debian, so I'm going to keep it as Debian, and I'm going to go to Debian 11 because that's the newest one. But if you're more of an Ubuntu person, then you can go Ubuntu, and you're probably going to, you know, if it's a server that you're going to be running for a long time, you're probably going to want one of the LTS ones. If not, you know, go for one of the newer ones. But again, like I said, I'm a Debian user, so we're going to go with Debian. And for the purposes of this, it's going to work the exact same, but this is just what I use as Debian. So we're going to hit select, and you'll see it's a little different. And if you see, this used to be $7.11 or something, and now it's $6.51. That's because we changed to the persistent disk, or the standard persistent disk. So that's cool. And let's see, let's make sure everything else is good. These can stay the same. And so the rest is good, except make sure you do these two things. You check HTTP and HTTPS. And that's because if you don't allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic, you're not going to be able to run your web app on it. People aren't going to be able to visit your website. So make sure you enable these. So I'm going to hit create. And it's going to take a minute or, yeah, minute or so. And we'll give it a minute with that. And what you'll see here is there's going to be an external IP, and that's the IP address that we need to reserve. So if you remember before, I said we need to reserve a static IP address. That's what I'm going to show you right after this starts, or right after it stops loading. And there we go. So the external IP you can see there. And if you're going crazy, like, oh, you know, like you can see the IP, you can DDoS or whatever. I mean, that if you know how the internet works, you know, you can, with a domain, you can see what the IP is that's attached to it. So it's not, you don't need to be too scared about me showing the IP address here. So now that we have, you know, an external IP address, and we can SSH into it here, but what we're going to want to do now is reserve that static IP address. So you're going to hit the hamburger menu here, and we're going to go down, and it's pretty far. So you're going to go to VPC network, and you're going to go to external IP addresses. So you're going to click that, and then let it load. Well, if someone does DDoS me, then that'll be interesting. So when you go to do this yourself, you'll only see one, and it'll look like this one here. and you can actually see which IP address is attached to each virtual machine. So this, this one is attached to the WinHacks is cool one that we just made. And all you need to do is just hit reserve. And WinHacks is cool. This name can technically be anything, but I always call it the same as my virtual machine. So we're going to hit reserve and give it a second, and it's going to get reserved. Cool. So now we need to go back to our compute engine so that we can get started with some other stuff. So we're going to go compute engine. We're going to go VM instances and give it a second to load. And then here we are. So the next thing I'm going to do, just because sometimes it takes a little bit, is configure the domain to point to this external IP. So what we're going to do is copy it to the clipboard so that we have it. And then next thing you need to do is open up your DNS provider, which I have open here. So we have, if you remember with the GitHub Pages workshop that we did a couple weeks ago, we grabbed this ghpages.xyz domain, and I'm just going to use it for the purposes of this workshop. So I'm going to create a new record. We're going to want it to be an A record so that it points to an IP address. And we're going to add the host. So this is going to be whatever the subdomain is. So if, for example, for the domain example.com, if you just want it to point to example.com, you put the @. But if you want it to be like www.example.com, you do www. So for this one, because the app that we made is like a shopping cart, I'm going to call it shopping. So it's going to be shopping.ghpages.xyz. We're going to paste in this domain here, and we're just going to hit save changes. And if you wanted to connect another subdomain or whatever, like say list.ghpages.xyz, you do the same thing. And you can configure as many domains as you want to point to it. But so there's that. Usually it takes a few minutes, so you're going to have to trust me that it's going to work. And we'll be able to test it in a little bit. But now we can actually get back to the VM instance and start having a little bit of fun with it. So I'm not going to show you how to actually SSH into it from like your command prompt or PowerShell or terminal or whatever, because one of the things about GCP is you need SSH keys if you want to do that. But if you know how SSH keys work, it should be pretty simple for you to set up. But for the purposes of this, we're just going to hit that button, and we're going to let it transfer its SSH keys and all that fun stuff so that we have the terminal running in a little browser window like this. And there we go. So we are officially in our server. And I'm going to make the text a little bit bigger. So cool stuff. But what do we do now that we have the server, right? Well, first thing you're probably going to want to do is sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. This shouldn't actually do much because this is like a brand new VM, and why isn't it showing me the whole thing? That's not very nice. I guess I'll have to reset this then and do it like this. Let's see if that works. But So you would run that and you'd hit yes. But sometimes it can take a while. Sometimes it takes no time at all. Um, but just in case it takes a while, I'm not going to do anything. The next thing we're going to do is actually install some stuff. So I have it copied here, and we're just going to paste it in. So what are we installing? Well, we're going to install Python 3. We're going to install pip. We're going to install git, and then a few stuff like htop, vim, screen, dns utils, and neofetch. You don't need to know what everything is, but I'll show you what you need to know for this. So we're going to hit that. We're going to hit yes, and it's going to take a minute or so to do all the fancy stuff. But this is just installing all the dependencies and stuff that we need. And if I remind you, all of that stuff is in the GitHub. So you can literally just copy and paste that into your server. So let's see if I can grab it. And it's still going because we're installing a lot of stuff. So let's just give it a second. And actually, I'm a little bit scared because sometimes when it does this processing triggers for ManDB, it can take a long time. So we're going to hope that it doesn't, because that would be very sad. So while we're waiting for that to finish, does anyone have any questions? Hopefully it doesn't. Yeah, I agree. I don't know why it is, but sometimes like it can be just huge. But it's worth it though, because after you can actually use stuff. I'm just gonna see if there's a way to disable the ManDB stuff, because I know there is. How was your day so far? Very good. You gotta love work. But you know what? It's very nice, and I'm very fortunate to be able to have an internship that I do. I'm seeing a question: is this stream going to be saved? Yes, it will. And if this does take a while, I'm going to cut it out of the recording, most likely, because I hope it doesn't take too long. But I'm actually going to put this on the side, and oh wait, now it's saying 100%. I was going to say I'm going to put it to the side and just use the other test VM that I created, but it's saying progress is 100%. Okay, well, I'm going to put it off to the side, and when it does work, I'll bring it back on. But for now, I am just going to SSH into this one here, this test VM. So this one here is a virtual machine that, oh, what happened with this? That just died. Anywho, make it a little bigger. Let's look at what we have. So I have two things there. I have what's called the Caddy file, and I have a folder called Flask Workshop, and that contains all of the stuff from the workshop that we did last week. So I'm actually going to remove both of these things. So I'm going to rmrf Flask workshop. So that's gone. I'm going to remove, actually I'm not, I'm going to open it up just to see what I actually put there. And that's okay. And, oh yeah, okay. So test VM is the domain. Okay, so assuming this is the virtual machine that we just created, and let me just go. Oh, actually, let's get out of that because it finally finished. Yay. Let's make that nice and big. So now we're on our original virtual machine that we created. So the first thing we want to do is clone the sample site, which is as simple as git clone and then the URL. So we're going to git clone. We're going to cd into it. And if we look, we got all the fun stuff in there that we had before. Actually, there should be, yeah. So this is actually a little bit different from last week. I added this to allow us to run this code in production. And I'll explain it a little bit more when we get to it. But so to set up our sample site, if you remember, we need a file called secrets.json. So I'm just going to copy the example. That star.json to secrets.json. So now we have a file called secrets.json. And let's just open it up. And that's not what I wanted. And so you have secret key, which could be like just a bunch of random letters or whatever. And then this port is going to define the port that you run it on. So by default, Flask runs on port 5000. But if you want to run it on some other port, you would specify it there. So let's go back now and configure our Caddy file. And actually, I'm going to do one thing just to make my Vim a little bit nicer. And let's see. Yeah, there we go. That was just adding my Vim config to the server. So let's create our Caddy file. So we're going to do touch Caddy file. Actually, wait, we didn't set up Caddy yet. See, I'm not thinking. So to install Caddy, it's just a few simple stuff you got to run. So you're going to copy this. You're going to add it in there and give it a second. Cool. And we're going to do this. Cool. Do this. And then we're going to update. And then we're going to install Caddy. Very, very cool. So now we do Caddy -- version. And okay, I guess that's not how you get the version, but maybe it's just Caddy version. There you go. So Caddy is installed now, which is great. And like I said before, Caddy is going to be what allows us to connect our domain to our web app, essentially. So first thing we need to do is actually get the web app up and running, right? So let's go ls, and we'll actually go into our Flask workshop. And I think nothing should need to be, oh, well, we need to install our dependencies. So pip3 install Flask and Flask SQL Alchemy. And again, if you don't know what this is just installing the required stuff we need to get our Flask site up and running. If you're not using Flask for your site, you're just learning how to connect a website to your domain, then you don't need to worry about that. But that's just getting ourselves prepared. So then all we need to do is Python 3 app.py. And as you can see, our website is running on port 5000. Pretty cool, but that's not what we want. We don't want to have to go to our IP address and then port 5000. We want an actual domain. Okay, let's see. Someone's saying, I can't get through the billing part because I use the GCP free trial for a past hackathon. I get error payment method and then some error thing. Should I use another Gmail account? So what this means, and this is actually something that I've encountered before. It's so if you use like the free credits from another hackathon or something, then it automatically creates a billing account for you, so you don't have to put your like your credit card or whatever in. But if those credits expired or whatever, then you that billing account actually ends up being deleted. So what you need to do, Mr. or Mrs. AA 2020, is you need to go into the billing section of the compute engine, or not compute engine. You need to go to billing section of GCP, and you need to create a new billing account, and then you need to tie that to your project that you're running. So if you don't care that much, you can use another Gmail account just to make it a little easier. But if you do actually care about, getting this going on your existing account, then you're going to have to create a new billing account to do that. But I hope that solves your issue. And yeah, if anyone else has any other questions, just let me know. So back to this. So we're running our site, cool, but we want a domain attached to it, right? And also we want to be able to keep working on our server and not just have to have it open like this, Python 3 app.py. So the first thing we can do, just pretty simple, is instead of just doing Python 3 app.py, if you add an ampersand, what that does is it runs it in the background as a process. So if we do that, you can see it said all the stuff, blah, 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 but we can still use all of our stuff. And actually, I don't know why it said this one stopped. Maybe, oh, let's see. And I think that might be it. Yeah, okay, so it is running. If you're not familiar, HTOP is kind of like the task manager that we have in Windows. So you can see like the CPU load, you can see how much memory we're using, stuff like that, and you can see all the different processes. And actually, one of the things we could do is do F3 and then Python app. Oh, something like, yeah, there you go. So you can see it there because I just searched it. But just a little tip, not something you need to worry about. You'll make another one. Yeah. Yeah, it's not, it's a little weird to deal with, but it's not tough. So yeah, our site is running on port 5000, and I think, yeah, we can see it if we do PS to see the processes. So let's go up a directory, and we're going to create something called a Caddy file. So we're going to do touch Caddy file, and that is going to create an empty file called Caddy file. And we're not going to do like .txt or anything. It's just going to be Caddy file with no extension. And next thing, we are going to open it up in Vim. If you don't know how to use Vim, then you can just use Nano. It's a little bit easier to do if you can just start typing. But I use Vim because it's a little nicer to use. So what do we have in our Caddy file? Well, first thing we need to do is put the domain that we want to attach our website to. So I'm kind of blanking on what it was. I think it was shopping.ghpages.xyz. And yes, so we're going to do shopping.ghpages.xyz. And then we're going to do open and close curly braces. And then all we need to do is reverse _ proxy localhost, because so currently our app is running on localhost, and then the colon for the port, and then 5000. And that just tells us, we're going to be hosting something on port 5000. And when someone goes to shopping.ghpages.xyz, that's where you're going to throw it to. So you go to this web page, shopping.ghpages.xyz, and it's going to serve you the same stuff that's being served on port 5000 locally, which is cool. And I'm pretty sure that is correct. If you look, I have a sample Caddy file. And if you look here, reverse proxy localhost 5000. And you can chain multiple domains like this. You can have comments. But this is what you need for a Flask site. So let's go back here. And we are going to do sudo caddy stop, just in case it's already running. And then we're going to do sudo caddy start. And you're going to see a lot of weird stuff, but we don't care about any of that. And what we're going to do now is go to shopping.ghpages.xyz. And what it should do is bring us to whatever's on port 5000. And it's entirely possible that our domain has not actually propagated. So let me see. I'm going to do dig .ghpages.xyz. And I'm seeing the answer sections. That means it should work. Let's make sure the Caddy file is good. Shopping.ghpages.xyz. Reverse proxy localhost 5000. That looks good. I think I need to reload. Sudo caddy reload. And let me just see off screen if I can get it to work. Pages.xyz. So to me, it looks like something probably isn't actually running on port 5000. I'm going to do a kill -9 10854. And I go here. And there we go. Okay, So let's go back into the Flask workshop. And we're going to do vim secrets.json just to make sure everything is working nicely. And we've got our secret key and we've got our port, so that should be good. We have if name is equal to main, create all, app.run debug is equal to true. It should all be okay. Let's just do Python 3 app.py and see what happens. Okay, so it was probably an issue with, what do you call it? It was probably an issue with how we were running it before. Okay, so as you can see, we go to shopping.php.xyz, and it is all good. So we're going to add WinHacks. We're going to add OSU. We're going to add Sane. We're going to go to view items, and we got all this cool stuff. Cool. And we can delete stuff, and it works completely fine. Pretty cool. But this isn't really nice to be running it like this. So I'm going to hit Control-C. And if I refresh it, hopefully that kills it. That's nice. And actually what I'm going to do is try this again. Just see. And let's refresh. Yeah, it seems like for whatever reason it doesn't like me using processes, which is a little strange, but I betcha I'm going to be looking at this later, and I'm going to think that it is very obvious what's going on, but I don't really know. 10954. Okay. So what we're going to do instead is use something called screen. And what screen does is it's almost like having multiple screens or multiple terminal sessions open at the same time. So I'm going to type screen, and you're going to see a lot of stuff here, and I don't really care. We're going to hit enter. And now, even though this looks the same, it's actually like a whole separate terminal session. And if we do Control A and then a colon, do session name, and we're going to call it shopping. And that's just that we can refer to it later. And let's exit out of it. We're going to do Python 3 app.py again. And we're going to do Control A and then D, and that gets us away from our screen session. So if we do this now, it should work. There we go. So it's working now. And I can exit out of here, close it up, and it should still work. As you can see, it does. Cool. But this isn't exactly how we want to run it because we're running on a Flask debug server right now. So what I've done is, once I open back the code back up, is added a way to very easily use a more professional server, which is called GUnicorn. And that is going to be much better for running the app than what we have right now. So we're going to do screen-r shopping. And that's going to return us back to that terminal session that we were at here. So you can see we're back where we were at before. So I'm going to hit Control C to stop that. And I'm going to make this a little bigger. And I'm going to vim app.py. I do know I used the words professional and unicorn in the same sentence, but surprisingly, G unicorn or Goonicorn or whatever it's called, that's actually the nice one to use when it comes to Flask and or Python web apps in general. So if you remember from last week, we just had, so we had all of this, right? And we had this app.debug or app.run debug is equal to true. But what the heck is all this stuff, right? Well, it's kind of just a fancy way of running this command here, which is unicorn-b 127.0.0.1 and then the port app. And you don't really need to know what that means, but essentially what it does, instead of like Python 3 app.py, you would run this and it would run your app on whatever port you specify here. So it's a nicer way of doing it. And actually the way that you, instead of running with debug is equal to true, is you just specify another thing when you run the app. Instead of Python 3 app.py. Oh, what is going on with, there we go. Instead of this, which is cool, it works, but it's not great, we want to do Python 3 app.py, and we're going to pass it something else. It could be anything. You can say prod. That's what I usually do. And I forgot to install gunicorn. So pip3 install gunicorn. And that's going to install, and then we can run it. And we may need to update our path. So let's see. Python 3 app prod. And okay, so this is another weird issue with gunicorn and Python and virtual environments is sometimes you need to run gunicorn from within a virtual environment for it to actually be there. So I'm going to do that. And I have to install something. Sudo apt install Python 3 PNV. And let's just, what this allows you to do is put all of your dependencies in one folder in your directory. So yeah, exactly. With all the errors showing up, at least we can know how to fix them. Exactly. You know, and you're probably going to run into errors that I'm not running into, just because, you know, everyone's development environment and stuff is a little bit different. So I try to streamline it as much as possible, but a lot of this is just playing around and working with it, right? So, but we're almost there. Just bear with me. So Python 3-mvenv, that allows you to create a virtual environment which has all your dependencies. And I think actually let's, wanted to make sure I was in the right bash shell, which I am now. So you can see there's this new folder called venv, and what we need to do is activate it. So it's just source, and it's venv /n/activate. And now you'll see in our terminal, there's this little thing here that says venv. And it just makes things cleaner to use it like this. And it gets rid of our fun gunicorn errors. So pip3 install flask SQL alchemy. And last one we need is gunicorn. And we'll give it a second to install all that stuff. And now we're crossing our fingers that it will actually work. Python 3 app.py prod. Look at that. Now it looks like we're getting errors and stuff, but that's just warnings that we don't care about. And as you can see, it's running, and it'll run a little bit faster and it'll be more secure, which is cool. That's what we want. So we can update, we can osu2 or whatever, we can delete, we can add new ones, and everything is nice again. So I think that pretty much concludes, if you wanted to just get as far as connecting your website up, that's really all you need. I loaded the URL myself. He's telling the truth. I'm hoping you didn't put anything crazy in there, which you didn't, which is good. But yeah, that's it. It's up and running. And actually, if you want to see, just as a little tidbit, so now that we have this open, remember, this is within our screen session we created, right? So we're going to do Control A and then the letter D, and then now we're out of it. And if we want to get back in there, it's screen-R shopping. So let's say we want to change our Caddy file so that we have multiple domains, right? If I remember correctly, the other one was like list.ghpages.xyz. So we'll try that. So we just edited the config. Then we do sudo caddy reload, and that just reloads it. And now, instead of shopping, let's go to list. As you can see, it works. So it's that simple to just add a domain. As long as the A record is there that you set up in your domain provider, the domain will work. And actually, say you want to have 2 websites running. Okay? So what we can do actually is paste that, and we're going to call that list. And let's reverse proxy 5001 instead. So I'm going to do sudo caddy reload. Now, currently we don't have anything running on port 5001, but what I'm going to do is cp, and I don't know if I have to do -r or something, but we'll just see -r. And so now if we go into app 2, let's just see if the virtual environment works. Cool, it did. And I think all of our dependencies should already be there. So if we do Python 3 app.py, oh, right. So this is why you need to use the production, right? Python 3 app.py prod, because you need to specify a different port. So let's open up our secrets.json, and we're going to change the port to 5001. And then we're going to do Python 3 app.py prod. And this should work. And let's just see. So now this should, actually it shouldn't be empty, because I'm going to rm site.db, which is just going to delete everything in the database. And now if we go, so it's empty, but if we go to instead shopping.ghpages.xyz, you'll see the stuff is still in there. So this is two different web apps that are actually running on these two different domains, and they're running on the same server. And if that doesn't convince you, I'm going to edit the styling. And instead of Alice Blue, I'm going to make the background color very nice and ugly green. So we're going to do that. And if we go to list, we'll see a lovely green. So this just proves that we are really running two different websites on it. And there you go. So as you can see, we got two different things running. And once again, if you don't want to have to keep this terminal open, we can Control C, we can exit. I didn't mean to exit out of there. I meant to hit deactivate. But all you need to do is create a new screen session. I hope this has been helpful for everyone so far. I wish someone went through and, showed me all this stuff when I was learning how to get stuff working on servers, and just Flask in general. But so we're going to do screen, and I'm going to do Control A, session name, and we're going to call this list. Cool. So now we got a new session. I'm going to CD into, I think I called it like app2. I'm going to activate the virtual environment, /bin/activate, and I'm going to do Python 3 app.py prod. And now you're running it in production. I can do Control A, D. Now I'm out of screen, and I can close that. And now, even if I exit out of the terminal entirely, still running. It's cool. So I think that's about it. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns before we wrap up this this talk we got here today? And just a reminder, if you want to see like some instructions on how to get this stuff up and running, check out the link I posted on the screen. And as some basic info. It's not super in depth, but it should be in depth enough that you can get something running, especially if you have the recording of this. But yeah, and also if you want the sample code, WinHacks / let me just grab the link for you. And there is that. So if you want to have the sample code for the Flask workshop that we did last week, you can check it out there. But that's about it. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I really hope it was helpful. If you're joining us from WinHacks, I really hope this helps clarify some issues that hackers normally have when trying to get stuff up and running, as well as if you're not, already registered and in the WinHacks Discord server, I definitely recommend you go to discord.winhacks.ca and join the fun. You'll be able to get even more free Google Cloud credits You'll be able to get a free domain. Actually, I think 2 free domains. You'll be able to get some free DigitalOcean credits, some free Linode credits, all sorts of crazy stuff that we're giving away for free, as well as the chance to win some nice money. So I definitely recommend you check that out. Um, but yeah, and that's Chris is right. It's time to become a hacker. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That about concludes it. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out in the WinHacks Discord server, and I will see you all in the future.